Hello, friends. How's it going? Happy Wednesday to you. And if you're joining me on the replay, of course, happy replay day to you. We're live, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's live level up conversation.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
I'm Winnie Sun, your host, Forbes contributor, CNBC council member, and award-winning financial pro, here to keep you on top of relevant, trending business news. But most importantly, as you know, you're part of today's discussion, and it's always a treat and an honor to have you here monitoring and sharing audience questions throughout the show with you, with me. It's just a beautiful thing. Now, today we have two very special guests, two of my friends, in fact, with us to talk about shifting your mindset for long-term sustainable success. You're in for such a treat. I'm so excited. But before we welcome them both to the show, let's talk about how the market closed. Now, the market closed down, unfortunately, kind of like lackluster. The Dow closed down just shy of 1 point, down 0.53. The NASDAQ, though, did very, very well. Those of you who are tech investors like myself, probably pretty happy. NASDAQ closed up 105 points today. The S&P closed up a good whopping 13 points. We'll take it. Now, on today, there was a lot of news that came out today, but I really want to save some time for our special interviews today. So I'm going to share with you a big set of news that I think that would be really helpful, and of course, news that you can use. And this is it. The Social Security Administration announced today that the cost of living adjustment will be 5.9%. That means that those of you who are receiving Social Security payments are going to see a nice little bit of a boost. This is actually going to be the biggest boost to Social Security beneficiary checks in about 40 years. Last year's boost was just 1.3% during the pandemic. And the last time this was this big was back in 2008, right after the sort of stock market crisis in 2008. I should say, it was big in 2009, but it was because of the stock market crash in 2008. So when beneficiaries saw a 5.8 increase that time, this, of course, trumps that number just a little bit more. Now, 60 million plus Americans, as you know, are Social Security beneficiaries. This boost is going to see a check boost in January of 2022 and beyond, and then it'll be reassessed again next October. So let's see how that fares. Those of you who are joining us, thank you so much. I see so many of you from all different platforms. Always appreciate you being here with us. So let's segue over to why we're really here. And that is to introduce two incredible leaders. Let me tell you that we had a chance to speak with them earlier today on the hashtag Winnie Sun tweet chat. And we discussed a very important topic of how we can get ourselves in the right mindset of sort of focusing on long-term and, of course, on success and growth. I want to welcome Kate O'Neill. Kate, hello. Welcome to the show. How are you, Kate?
I'm so good, and thank you so much for having me on the show, Winnie. It's a wonderful treat to be here.
Well, it's a wonderful treat to spend time with you, Kate. You are such a powerhouse, and I definitely love calling you a friend because you're someone I've admired. I know we have spent time on the Adobe Insiders together, and that's what I had the honor of getting to know you. Now, let me introduce Kate to many more of you, though. Kate is a keynote speaker, author, and consultant, focusing on meaningful marketing, something that so many of us can relate to and appreciate. Digital experiences and strategy. We got to talk about this at some point too. The tech humanist. What is a tech humanist? I love this. Strategic optimist. This was a new term for me, Kate, that we talked about. Strategic optimist. We're going to delve into that a little bit more so as well. But you're everywhere. CEO of KO Insights. You have your own show. You used to be with Netflix. And of course, powerhouse of the Thinkers 50 radar. Is there much that you don't do, Kate?
Well, it's really sweet of you to frame it that way, but I'm excited to bring new ideas to folks and to gather ideas from the wonderful audiences that I get a chance to speak with. And yours is no exception, Winnie. You had some real amazing thinkers in your audience in that tweet chat today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that very much, Sue Kate. Yes, we have a great group of thinkers, some great people. And I want to say on that note, welcome to Vicky Garvey on Facebook Live and so many others are joining us. Don't be shy. Let us know where you're joining us from. I know Vicky is joining us from the UK. So welcome to the show, my friend. And of course, Dorie Clark. Now, many of you have heard of Kate. You probably also met Dorie Clark. She's ranked one of the top 50 business thinkers in the universe, I will say. Communication coach, consultant, keynote speaker, and also professor at Duke University School of Business, author of The Long Game, Entrepreneur You, Reinventing You, Stand Out. And she's also a contributor to, a little unknown college called Harvard, but their Harvard Business Review. As many of you know, this is legendary performance. Thank you so much, Dorie, for being here. And thank you so much. I know the two of you had to juggle your cat children earlier today. So
It's tough being a working mom. That's right.
we got to do what we got to do, right, ladies? I mean, our children need us, whether they be feline or two-legged like mine.
Yeah, that was the best tweet of the entire chat, I thought, was when Dorie said that that's how she works from home for the last, what was it, 15 years, Dorie, that you tire the cats out first.
Yeah, you do that first thing in the morning. Everything else is smooth sailing.
Okay, so I need to ask you this, Dorie. So how do you tire out a cat? I know our audience probably knows, but I'm curious.
It's all about the mousy toy.
Okay.
You've got to have the right toy. I have basically a 3-foot long fishing pole. You can buy it on Amazon, and you've got a mouse on a string, and that is the greatest pendulum in the world. And you will get your cats to have their cardio for the day, and after that, they just hang out on the couch.
I love that, Dorie. Well, tell me about this. Okay, did your cat approve of your new book? Because we got to talk about the new book.
They've napped on it quite a bit. So I feel like permission has been granted. The new book is called The Long Game: How to Be a Long-Term Thinker in a Short-Term World. Cats are very, very good at that, as we all know.
Well, I'm excited to hear about this book. Let me ask you this. Dorie, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. It's been a very long process here. Why do you feel like this topic fits perfectly during this time? Because I think it does. I feel like sometimes we need hope. We need to, focus on where we're trying to go. How does this book fall into place?
Well, ultimately, the pandemic was a time when we were pretty much all short-term thinkers, and we had to be. Everything changed overnight. We had plans. Guess what? Now we don't have plans. Everything's canceled. Everything's virtual, and we're just trying to keep up. That is a great way to be when there is a crisis. But the problem occurs when we never actually get out of crisis mode. And I think for too many of us now, this has been dragging on 18, 19 months.
Mm-hmm.
We are almost forgetting how to behave in a different way. And I think this is really a time when we need to put a stake in the ground and say, look, it's great to respond quickly and to be reactive when you need to, but that's not how we can live our whole lives. We want to be forward directed. I think that most people have goals of some kind they want to achieve, and you can really only do that effectively if you do shift to long-term thinking so you can create the plans that get you there.
The plans to get us there, so important and so meaningful. And Patricia Summer, she's joining us from Facebook Live, and she's saying, just trying to keep up. So very true, Dorie. Let me ask you this, Kate. Many of us are trying to find our focus. And so often, like Dorie had mentioned, we've been reactive, right? We're looking at what we need to get through today, to get through this pandemic. If we just get through this today, if we can only just work from home a little bit, things will get back to normal. But we need to also focus on that long-term goal. So let's talk about this a little bit of sort of being in that futurist mindset versus a fixed or short-term mindset. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I've been working around future strategy for quite a while. I've been a technologist for 25 years, and the last decade or so, it's really been on strategy that's forward-looking, insights and foresights. And one of the things that I notice about that is that a lot of times we spend a lot of time within business on planning for what can go wrong and mitigating risks, and that's important. But we don't spend a lot of time on thinking about what can go right. And we don't spend a lot of time thinking about how we're going to create the conditions for success and really lean into that success. And in the context of the pandemic and the context of so many of the change factors that we're facing that are exponential, like artificial intelligence, and that's the impact of that on the future of work and on, misinformation and disinformation and privacy considerations and all of these different factors that are huge. We really need to be thinking about how do we acknowledge the full scale of the risks and harms that those changes kind of present to us, while also figuring out what could be the best way we could lean into that, what could be the best outcomes out of all these change factors, and really work to make sure that we create the conditions for that success.
I love that. Now, Kate, you got to tell me about the book right behind you because we want to see that. Can you share a little bit what's going on there? Because I'm loving the sunglasses now.
Yeah. So this is my latest book, A Future So Bright. And that is the work of this book is to define this model of strategic optimism. That's my new concept that I've launched with this book, strategic optimism. And so the concept there is that, that, as I've just said, we tend to think about things in too limited a way. We're thinking about the future as dystopia versus utopia, which is too limited a framework. It's very disempowering, and it doesn't acknowledge our agency in creating the future through the decisions and actions that we take today. So this book is about trying to address that. Think about climate emergency, think about artificial intelligence, think about privacy, geopolitical upheaval, all of these different factors in a way that brings the decisions and actions to within our framework. And even as business leaders and entrepreneurs, we have the opportunity every day to make decisions that are going to create better conditions in the future. So that's what this book is really trying to address.
Very cool. I can't wait to get a hold of both your books. Now, let me ask you this, Dorie. We talked about, Kate just talked about strategic optimism, but one concept that we talked about on today's tweet chat that I would love to hear more from you on is the concept of strategic patience. Like, what is strategic patience, and how do you shift your perspective to optimize this practice of more patience?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're exactly right, Winnie. In the new book, The Long Game, I talk about strategic patience, which I think is an important concept, because if you are genuinely playing the long game, if you are pursuing long-term goals that are meaningful enough, inevitably you are going to have roadblocks of some kind. You're going to have obstacles. Things are not going to work out in precisely the way that you imagined. That's kind of inherent to anything that's a longer term quest. Things change and you can't predict them. So we do have to be strategically patient. And the distinction I'm drawing, so often, I've been frustrated in my life and in my career by the advice to just be patient. Because I feel like oftentimes people throw that at you essentially as a way of just saying, shut up. They're saying, oh, just be patient. Just sit back. Things will happen. And it's so maddening because so often things don't happen. You have to make things happen. And strategic patience is about understanding that, yes, okay, we're not going to get it today. You have to work for it. It's going to take a while. It's probably going to take longer than you want. But there are things that you can do to accelerate that journey and to be smart about it. You create a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, you monitor it, you make adjustments as necessary, and you recognize, all right, it might be a while, but you're going to be pursuing it relentlessly.
Pursuing it relentlessly. I love that. So important. And really having that sort of mindset planning. And I like how you gave us some of those actionable activities. So you don't have to just sit there and wait for someone to come along and I guess actually let you have your day. Kate, you have the role of a technology futurist. I mean, you look at things way in advance of these are the areas that you think are going to be more relevant in the future. How does that kind of come into place, do you think, when you talk about the future is very bright, right? There's a lot of things to be excited about, but there's so many different options. And like Dorie was saying, we want to be strategically patient, but we also want to be strategically optimistic. But how do you make a distinction of what things you should engage in and what things you should abort and leave to the side? Because I know Dorie had talked on the tweet chat a little bit about creating that white space, but Kate, I'd love for you to kind of tackle that question if you could.
Sure, absolutely. So, what's been interesting to me throughout this career, throughout the trajectory of my career, is that working around technology, working around experience strategy, I call it human experience strategy. I'm thinking always about, what is the role of technology, and particularly data and emerging technology, on shaping the impact on the future of humanity, and how do we prepare humanity for what, by all indications, looks like an increasingly data and tech-driven future. So one thing I've noticed is that within the last few years, my second to last book was Pixels and Plays, which was talking about integrated physical and digital experiences. My last book was called Tech Humanist, really thinking about how we create technology experiences that are better for humans and that also can be better for business. And now what I'm seeing is that over the course of looking at that, we've actually moved into a time where we're in the technology. The technology is around us. We are living and breathing the world of technology. We all carry technology with us all the time. We're surrounded by the data mesh that we're creating through our actions and through our interactions in physical space and online. And so I think it's really important for us to think in a really integrative way about how do we sort of move intentionally through this space and create the kinds of futures that we want. Are we being intentional about the algorithms that are used in social media? Are we being intentional about how we engage in the technology driven spaces that are defining the world around us and creating the experiences around us? So I think that for small business owners and for entrepreneurs, it's really a good time to be very intentional about thinking about the technologies that you're bringing into your strategy, that you're deploying within your organization. And I have a lot, within Tech Humanist and A Future So Bright about how to think about that. But I think just for all of us in general, it's really important that we're very eyes wide open and aware about what it looks like and means to be human in this context, in this time where technology is just in the air that we breathe and move in. So that I think is a good adjustment for us to be thinking constantly about, the algorithms that are shaping our decisions, the data that's being collected about us, and be moving toward a place where we can be more intentional about that.
Wow, Kate, that was a lot to think about. I'm still thinking about what you said. Like surrounding, like everywhere is data and technology, and what does it mean to be human? And you know, sometimes I think I'm on the weekends. I'm thinking what it means to be human. I'm liking this. I got it. We got to go deeper on this. I love this. But one thing, Dorie, we talked about a little bit. I'm super. I honestly, the question kind of stuck me. I didn't know how to answer this, so I'm looking to you for guidance on this concept of a life portfolio. What is, Dorie, a life portfolio? Because I feel like if I understood this, I would be able to utilize this concept. It sounds brilliant. What is this?
We're going to solve all your problems right here and now, Winnie. You got it. So in my previous book, I'll pull it off the shelf here, Entrepreneurial You, I talked about creating a portfolio career.
I love this book. I have this book.
Thank you. Well, the basic idea behind a portfolio career is, of course, you're doing a lot of different things, much like you do, Winnie. I know that you work in the financial world. You also have the media world. There's lots of different pieces to what you do and in different revenue streams. It helps you hedge risk and it helps you capture the upside. That's amazing. A life portfolio really just extends the sphere that we're looking at. And it's not just your career. It's about diversification of how you live your life. And at any given time, there are going to be things, waxing and waning. I was doing a podcast interview earlier today with a wonderful woman who's an entrepreneur who has downscaled her work because she has a very sick relative that she is caring for. And as part of her life portfolio, she is now over-indexing on family. And that's what needs to happen right now. But ultimately, there are different seasons for things. And it's about allocating our time and our resources, our energy and our emotional resources accordingly so that we're creating the best portfolio possible for our lives. Sometimes it's going to be very intense on work. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's going to be really intense with travel or friends or maybe with kids. So we need to be making the best choices for where we are now and where we believe we want to be.
I love that. That's powerful. Where we are and where we want to be, and I feel for you. I mean, so many people are dealing with, like you said, the pandemic and ailing family members and work and life and balance and cats even. And so we get to somehow figure that out. And like you said, allocating space and time for that. So life portfolio, really powerful stuff. And, I love this. I'm kind of thinking like what Kate was talking, there's data, there's technology everywhere. And then putting everything into place of what our life has meaning, right? And that we're present. And so that time doesn't just pass us by, but sort of changing that mindset of thinking more long-term. I think we need a lot more of that. And and this is what I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the time. I will tell you, I would love to continue this conversation. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue to take this to another level on another show, because I think we need to talk more about being present. I also would love to talk more about what technology looks like in the future and how we're going to evolve, and how we're going to have to change ourselves and the ways that we think, view, and do business, Kate, as well. So let's do this. Let's have some fun. We got a lot of people joining us on all different platforms. I see Patricia, I see Alina, I see Kathleen also. Lots of stuff, lots of ways to connect. But let's do speed round, because we want to... All right, Dorie, I'm going to start the first one with you, and then we're going to go Kate. And that is, I would like to hear, name an early career experience and share with us what you learned from it, Dorie. Tell us, where'd you work?
So one early career experience, Winnie, that comes to mind is I was an intern when I was in college for the National Organization for Women. And I had a great boss there named Kim Ward. And she actually really stands out because I had so few good bosses in my entire career. I think part of why I became an entrepreneur is because I was forced into it with so many bad bosses. But Kim was just a really loving and supportive mentor. So I learned a ton from her.
I love it. Well, thank you, Kim, for doing that, because we all need one of you in our lives. Wonderful. All right, Kate, tell me, I know you've worked at several places, and this is something I think a lot of women and even young women watching today are like, wow, Kate has a job that I want. I'm sensing that already. So Kate, tell us your experience and what you learned.
Yeah, so everybody is always kind of taken with my experience at Netflix, and it was indeed a really formative experience. So that was pretty early on. I was one of the first 100 employees at Netflix, and one of the things that I got to observe that was really formative for my career was that early on, this is 1999, 2000 timeframe. We're still engaged in all out, sort of bloody battle with Blockbuster over market dominance. And Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, invested money into research and development for what we were then calling set-top boxes, which were the predecessor to streaming as we know it. And what I learned from that was that, he was thinking about the what was important now and what's going to be important in the future. So one eye on now, one eye in the future. And to me, that's what it looks like when Dorie talked about strategic patience. That's the idea that always comes to mind for me, is really learning how to see this trajectory from now to the future and really lean into the resources and alignment that it's going to take strategically to get you into that place. So that's been really important to me, and I've passed that insight along to many of my advisory clients over the years.
I love that, because sometimes you don't see what you don't know, but you have to sort of make that leap of faith. Powerful, Kate. Thank you so much. All right, Dorie, last question for you. And I know you got to run, so we're gonna make sure to get this in. And that is, Dorie, if you could choose one person to meet for an hour, who would it be, and what would you want to ask them?
Well, I think one person, if we're able to go way back in time, that I would like to talk to is Benjamin Franklin, because I feel like he was such a Renaissance man. He did so many different things, and I really admire. Speaking of a life portfolio and a portfolio career, he was someone who was, an inventor and an ambassador and a statesman. And he did not let boundaries define him. So I would be really interested in talking with him about that and how he crafted his own life portfolio.
I love that. And he would be like, ooh, I think he would have his own definition of a life portfolio, Dorie. That would be interesting. And he would I'm guessing he would write the foreword to your next book too on that note. So that would be huge. All right, Kate, okay, on to you, because I know this is something that you have an opinion on. Like, I know you have obviously a very popular show and you've written books and you're like a powerhouse. Let me ask you this. Who would you want to meet with for an hour and what would you ask them?
When you mentioned earlier that you think that there are some women and non-binary folks watching the show who might look at my career and might want this kind of, tech-driven career, the person that comes to mind for me is Ada Lovelace, who is an early pioneer in computing and software and one of the formative women and people in general in the field. So any women and non-binary people watching this show who are interested in programming and computers and technology, look up Ada Lovelace, get to know her career and what she contributed to the field. And she would definitely be someone that I would love to spend an hour talking to and really getting to understand how she was so brave and insightful into what became such obviously an important part of our world.
I love that, Kate. That's powerful. I actually don't have any background on it. I'm going to do some research. And hopefully, this is something, I mean, I love what you mentioned. You're going to always be an inspiration. There's going to be people that want to get to know you more, Kate. Let me ask you this because we didn't get a chance to talk about this yet. And, I'm going to circle back because I'd like to learn more about your book, if you don't mind. Tell me about the inspiration to this book. You've written others. What made you decide that this was the book that you wanted to put out now?
Well, to me, what's happening is that we've been talking for a while, in my career, we've been talking for a while about how data impacts humanity and the shape of the impact on the future of humanity. And so meaning is a really important construct in that, and how we use meaning to understand the human condition, what's important to humans. But what I've been finding is that thinking and talking about technology and data to business leaders, one of the concepts that comes up a lot is thinking about the future and how we're building toward a meaningful future. And one of the things that some of the topics that often come up is how frightened people are of the future. And I think one of the reasons that we are frightened is, as I mentioned earlier, I think this framework of dystopia versus utopia that we're so used to talking about the future in is a really harmful and unhealthy way of thinking about the future. And it removes our agency, it removes our empowerment from the discussion. So I wanted to write something that put some sense of empowerment back into the equation and says to people, you actually make the future through the decisions and actions you take every day. And so whether we're talking about the climate emergency and the many sort of implications from that, or whether we're talking about intelligent automation and the impact of that on the future of work and the future of jobs and the future of the workplace, all three, by the way, different topics from one another that interrelate. And I go into that within the book. Or, like I said, misinformation, disinformation, geopolitical upheaval. There are so many big topics right now that I think people feel very fearful about, not to mention, of course, the pandemic that we've been talking a little about already. So when you combine all of those, I think it's natural that people feel a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety about the way that we're looking toward the future. And I think it's really important that we have a sense of hope about the future that comes from a place of understanding that we shape the future through our actions. We need to take more intentional action toward creating the futures that we want to see, those better, brighter futures that we're trying to create and that we would like to live to see and create for future generations.
I love that. I love that how you say for future generations, not just for us, but for future generations. Because like the things that you mentioned, I think many people are watching are feeling overwhelmed and they're seeing very short term. And there's a lot of things that there is hope. And there, like you talked about earlier, strategic optimism and making sure that we focus down the road. I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into your book, Kate. This is great. We got a chance to share your book with everybody. You can see it on screen. There's Kate's website. But let me ask you this, Kate, if people want to, follow your journey, learn a little bit more about your book and other projects you're working on, where should they go?
Well, you showed my website, and that URL is koinsights.com. So people can find all of my consulting, speaking, and writing work there. But also Kateo, Kateo on Twitter is where I'm most active online, and I'm happy to engage with folks there. Very, very interested in hearing from folks about what they're thinking about and what makes them excited and nervous about the future, so that we can plan in equal measure to create that better, brighter future.
I love that, Kate. I used to I used to always, well, I still do, get nervous every time I walk on stage on CNBC or Good Day LA or other show. And my business partner always says, well, when you're nervous, it means you care. And so that you just talked about, whether it be positive or negative or nervous or excited about the future, it means you care. And I think that is a good place to leave this. We all care. And most important, we're excited to celebrate you, Kate, and your new book. I'm excited to dive into this. Thank you so much for the time. Gotta say, I'm kind of loving the yellow sunglasses because I mean, how cool is that, right?
Had to go and buy them to match the cover.
I know. So cute. So cute. They can see him right on top of her head. Talk about great marketing. Kate, you've done such a great job. It's such a treat to see you. I wish we were in person together so I could give you a great big hug and a thank you. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being generous with your knowledge today, not only on the tweet chat, but also on this show. So those of you who didn't get a chance to see all that we talked about, Kate shared, I call them diamonds and gems. She shared so much knowledge with us earlier today. You can actually go on Twitter and search for hashtag Winnie Sun. We shared about 12, 13 questions today, and Kate answered them for you. So there's so much knowledge. So if you're curious about really getting into that mindset of thinking long-term, thinking about success, thinking about what your future will look like, thinking of sort of your personal what or why or how, jump on that tweet chat. As you know, the Winnie Sun tweet chat is the largest business personal finance tweet chat on social media. We average millions of views every single week. We would love to get your insight. Feel free to jump in, tweet to Kate, tag her so she sees, and ask her questions. Anybody in the tweet chat, you can do that. And of course, we invite you to join us again next week on the tweet chat, and of course on this show just about every single week. But tomorrow we're going to do a very special episode of In the Loop with my co-host from Digital Trends, the one and only Greg Nibbler. We can't wait to see you. But thank you so much, Kate, for your time. Thank you so much for your friendship. And
Thank you.
I don't know.
Thank you, Winnie. Yeah, no, I so appreciate it. And I appreciate how hard you work to make sure you bring financial education to people and all of these discussion resources for folks. So thank you, Winnie.
Oh, thank you. I just love you. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, supporting our program. And please take a moment to share the show with someone that you care about all over social media and tag me, of course. As a reminder, you can find full episodes of Level Up on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, Roku, and as of this week, my friends, the CW in San Francisco. Be well, and I can't wait to see you again tomorrow.